Captain Zexthrall of the Galactic Safety Commission stared at the official documentation with all four of his eyes, his tentacles twitching in barely contained frustration. The holographic display showed the same impossible statistics he'd been reviewing for the past 3 standard cycles, and each time he read them, they made less sense than before. The numbers were staggering. In the past galactic standard year alone, there had been over 2.3 million safety briefings conducted across the known galaxy. Every species, every individual, every piece of equipment more complex than a basic nutrient dispenser required mandatory certification. The bureaucracy was vast, essential, and had prevented countless disasters across 847 registered civilizations. Every species followed the rules. Every species except one. "Explain this to me again, Administrator Kelvar," he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into standard galactic. "Every species in the known galaxy, all 847 registered civilizations, are required to complete mandatory safety briefings before operating any piece of equipment more complex than a basic food dispenser. Every species except humans, sir," Administrator Kelvar replied, her crystalline form shifting colors from blue to a nervous purple. Regulation 2847 Alpha clearly states that Terrans are exempt from all standard safety protocols. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Zexthrall's tentacles slammed against his desk, sending data tablets scattering across the polished surface. That's exactly what doesn't make sense. Humans are barely out of their planetary adolescence. They've only been spacefaring for, 2 of their centuries. The Velthari have been exploring the cosmos for 50,000 years, and they still need a safety briefing to operate a simple matter reorganizer. He gestured wildly at the wall display showing galactic safety statistics. The ZFTI, Masters of Probability Calculation, require 17 hours of certification to operate a basic plasma welder. The Meldari, who can manipulate matter with their thoughts, still need supervised training to handle quantum containment fields. The ancient Korthak, who built half the infrastructure in this sector, complete safety courses that last longer than most human lifespans. Kelvar's crystalline form rippled with sympathetic frustration. She had been dealing with inquiries about the human exemption for months, and each one left her more confused than the last. "Sir, the regulation has been in place for 7 standard years. It was passed by unanimous vote of the full Galactic Safety Commission." "Unanimous?" Zexthrall muttered, his color shifting to a deep, frustrated orange. "Do you know what that means, Kelvar? In the entire history of the Commission, we've had exactly 3 unanimous votes. One was to establish basic safety protocols after the Great Automation Disaster of 2847. One was to ban uncontrolled AI research after the Silicon Uprising. And the third was to give humans, a free pass on everything we've learned about keeping sentient beings alive around dangerous machinery." Through the viewport of Station Harmony, they could see the latest example of this cosmic injustice. A human freighter pilot, some young woman named Captain Riley Thompson, was currently performing maintenance on her ship's quantum drive. No safety briefing, no supervision, no protective gear beyond some primitive fabric coveralls, and what appeared to be a faded band shirt with words in the human language that roughly translated to, "Born to be wild." She was literally elbow-deep in machinery that could theoretically tear a hole in space-time, humming what sounded like an ancient human war chant. "Look at her," Zexthrall said, pointing with 2 tentacles simultaneously. "She's performing a level 7 quantum field calibration, a procedure that requires certification from 3 different safety boards and supervision by at least 2 qualified engineers. Our best Velthari technicians spend months learning to do what she's doing, and they still require full environmental suits and backup teams." As they watched, Captain Thompson seemed to be arguing with her ship's computer, her voice carrying through the station's monitoring systems. "Come on, baby. I know you can do better than that," she was saying to a machine worth more than most planets' annual budgets. "Don't be stubborn. That resonance frequency is all wrong. And you know it." Impossible as it seemed, the quantum drive's output readings immediately improved. Kelvar's form shifted to a pale yellow, the color of disbelief. "Sir, she just talked to it, and it responded. I saw it too," Zexthrall replied grimly. And that's exactly why I've been tasked with investigating this regulation. The High Council wants answers. They want to know why we allow beings who've barely figured out faster-than-light travel to ignore every safety protocol we've developed over millions of years of galactic civilization. He turned away from the viewport, unable to watch the human continue her casual disregard for physics and common sense. The Eternal Archive has raised concerns. The first builders are asking questions. Half the galaxy thinks we've lost our minds, and the other half is starting to wonder if maybe we should all throw out our safety manuals and start humming at our equipment. Sir, Kelvar said hesitantly, perhaps we should review the incident reports that led to this regulation? I've been compiling the files for the investigation. Zexthrall's color shifted to a deep, resigned purple. Fine, bring up the files. But I'm telling you, there has to be some mistake in the bureaucracy. Some clerical error, some misunderstanding, some perfectly logical explanation for why the youngest, most chaotic species in the galaxy is apparently better at not dying around dangerous machinery than civilizations that have been perfecting safety for eons. As the holographic files materialized around them, thousands upon thousands of incident reports, statistical analyses, and testimonials from across the galaxy. Neither of them noticed Captain Thompson successfully recalibrating her quantum manifold using nothing but intuition, a basic multi-tool, and what appeared to be percussive maintenance. Outside the viewport, her ship's engines hummed with perfect harmony, running at 127% of factory specifications. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of humor, and apparently it had a favorite species. From Official Incident Report GSC 4471. The Veltheri Equipment Malfunction. Investigating Officer, Senior Inspector Quindar. Date, 73 cycles before current. Play the recording again, Zexthrall commanded, though he'd already watched it 17 times. Each viewing only deepened his confusion about the fundamental nature of equipment operation across species. The holographic display materialized, showing the pristine interior of the VSV Crystal Harmony, a Veltheri deep space research vessel. Everything about the ship screamed advanced civilization. Walls that seemed to be grown rather than built, control surfaces that responded to thought as much as touch, and an overall aesthetic that spoke of millions of years of technological refinement. The Veltheri were among the galaxy's most advanced species, and for good reason. Their crystalline bodies could interface directly with technology through quantum resonance fields. Their collective memory meant that knowledge was never truly lost, and their lifespans, measured in geological epochs, meant some individuals had been studying the same field for longer than most civilizations had existed. Master Technician Yilvarin, the being at the center of this incident, was over 12,000 years old. He had supervised the installation of atmospheric processors on over 400 worlds. His expertise was literally encyclopedic, stored in crystalline matrices that could access the accumulated knowledge of his entire species. In the recording, he was attempting to activate a simple atmospheric processor, Model 7749 Delta, standard equipment that had been in use across the galaxy for over 15,000 years. The design was so refined, so thoroughly tested, that it was considered as safe as breathing. Safer, actually, since it was designed to ensure breathing remained possible. Despite having completed the mandatory 47-hour safety briefing just days before, a course that covered all 3,847 safety protocols, their historical applications, theoretical foundations, and mathematical proofs, and having two equally qualified supervisors present, something went catastrophically wrong. Computer, increase volume, Zexthrall instructed, leaning forward with all four eyes focused on the display. Warning, atmospheric processor anomaly detected. The ship's AI announced in the calm, measured tones that all Veltheri technology employed. Primary filtration systems showing irregular quantum fluctuations. Please consult Safety Manual Section 847, B subsection 23 through 891 for appropriate response protocols. On screen, Master Technician Yilvarin froze. His crystalline form began cycling through colors rapidly. Deep blues of concentration shifting to reds of stress and finally settling into the rapid prismatic flashing that indicated complete system overload. I cannot recall if Procedure 847B23 requires me to first disengage the tertiary safeguards, or if I should initialize the quantum stabilizers. Yildirim said, his voice carrying the harmonics of deep distress. The manual states both procedures are required, but subsection 23 alpha indicates tertiary disengagement first, while subsection 23 beta suggests quantum initialization takes priority. They appear contradictory, and I cannot access the proper resolution protocol. The two supervisors, Master Engineer Yildirim and Senior Technician Vexthal, immediately began frantically consulting their data tablets. Their crystalline forms pulsed with information flows as they accessed the vast libraries of technical documentation stored in their racial memory. Warning: atmospheric contamination increasing beyond acceptable parameters. The AI continued with its maddening calm. Current atmospheric composition showing 12.7% toxic particulate matter. Immediate corrective action required to prevent crew endangerment. Cross-reference Protocol 847b-23 with emergency atmospheric contamination procedures. Yildirim commanded, his form cycling through deep purples of intense concentration. Multiple references found, Vexthal reported. However, there are 17 different subprotocols depending on the type of contamination, the age of the processor, the ship's current location relative to stellar bodies, and the specific quantum resonance frequency of the filtration matrix. Warning: atmospheric contamination now at 18.3%. Evacuation protocols may be necessary. What followed was a scene that would have been comical if it weren't so dangerous. 3 of the galaxy's most advanced beings, with access to the accumulated knowledge of their entire civilization, spent crucial minutes debating the proper interpretation of safety protocols while the air around them became increasingly toxic. The recording ended with alarms blaring, emergency bulkhead sealing, and the entire crew being evacuated to the medical bay while automated systems flooded the chamber with neutralizing agents. The ship required 3 days in space dock for repairs, and the incident report filled over 200 pages with detailed analysis of how the protocol confusion had led to the near disaster. And now, Kelvar said, her crystalline form shifting to what Vexthal had learned was anticipatory yellow. Here's what happened when we had a similar incident on a human vessel. The second recording materialized, showing the cargo bay of the human freighter Lucky Strike. The contrast was immediate and jarring. Where the Velthari ship had been pristine and ordered, the human vessel looked like organized chaos. Equipment was stacked in ways that defied several safety regulations, tools were scattered across work surfaces, and there was what appeared to be a half-eaten sandwich sitting on top of a quantum resonance scanner. Jake Morrison, the human engineer on duty, was about 25 years old, barely an infant by galactic standards. He had been certified to work on atmospheric processors for exactly 6 months, having completed a training course that lasted 3 days and consisted mainly of, here's how it works, here's how to fix it when it doesn't, don't stick your fingers in the glowy parts. When the atmospheric processor began malfunctioning, the exact same model, the exact same failure mode, Morrison barely looked up from his data pad, where he appeared to be reading something called Spacecraft Maintenance for Dummies. "Oh, that old thing's just throwing a fit again," Morrison muttered, not even pausing his reading as alarms began to sound. "Probably got some space dust in the intake manifold." Without consulting any manual, accessing any database, or even looking particularly concerned, he walked over to the machine. The atmospheric processor was cycling through the same catastrophic failure sequence that had nearly killed the Velthari crew, but Morrison approached it like he was dealing with a temperamental pet. He kicked it twice solid, measured kicks that would have made safety inspectors across the galaxy faint with horror. Then he opened an access panel that was clearly marked Authorized Personnel Only and Danger. Quantum Field Exposure. Reached inside with his bare hands, adjusted a few settings by feel alone, and banged on the side with his wrench. "There we go, sweetheart," he said to the machine. "Just needed a little percussive maintenance." The malfunction stopped immediately. The atmospheric processor hummed back to life, running smoother than it had in months. Morrison walked back to his data pad, made a note that read, "Fixed atmospheric thingy needed percussive adjustment," and returned to his reading. Vexthal stared at the screen in absolute disbelief. He kicked it. He violated every protocol in existence. ignored 17 different safety warnings, and just kicked it. And it worked, Kelvar added unnecessarily, her form now a stunned silver. It worked better than our most advanced procedures, Zexthrall whispered, his tentacles drooping in defeat. A 12,000-year-old expert with access to his species' entire accumulated knowledge was defeated by a machine that a human fixed by hitting it with a wrench. Personal log of Chief Engineer Torquan, GSV Infinite Wisdom. Classification: confidential. Zexthrall's investigation was taking him down a rabbit hole of increasingly bizarre incidents, each one more impossible than the last. The file he was currently reviewing had been classified at the highest levels for good reason. It involved the near destruction of one of the galaxy's most advanced vessels and the complete failure of every safety protocol known to galactic civilization. The GSV Infinite Wisdom represented the pinnacle of interspecies cooperation. Built by a consortium of 12 different civilizations, it was more than just a research vessel. It was a monument to what could be achieved when the galaxy's greatest minds worked together. The ship boasted the most sophisticated quantum drive system ever constructed, with redundant safety systems that had their own safety systems, and backup protocols that were more advanced than most species' primary technologies. The quantum drive itself was a marvel of engineering. Designed by the Eternal Archive's greatest theorists, built using Velthary crystalline matrices, and powered by ZFTI probability generators, it could theoretically tear through spacetime with precision measured in quantum units. It was so safe, so thoroughly tested, that the insurance companies had declared it mathematically impossible to fail. They were wrong. Computer, play Chief Engineer Torquan's personal log, timestamp 847.23.5. Zexthrall commanded. The hologram of a massive, bear-like creature materialized in the air. Torquan belonged to the Gorthak species, renowned throughout the galaxy for their methodical approach to engineering and their absolute, unwavering adherence to safety protocols. No Gorthak had ever been involved in an equipment failure, not once in their 12,000-year recorded history. They were so cautious that they performed safety checks on their safety checks. Personal log, Chief Engineer Torquan. The recording began, the translator conveying not just words, but the deep, bone-weary exhaustion in the creature's voice. Day 15 of the quantum drive malfunction. Despite following every safety protocol exactly as written, despite consulting with specialists from 7 different species, despite running diagnostics that have consumed more computational power than some civilizations use in a decade, we cannot resolve the cascade failure in the quantum manifold. The hologram showed Torquan in the ship's engine room, surrounded by displays that painted a picture of technological catastrophe. Warning lights bathed everything in crimson, and the quantum drive, normally a thing of elegant, humming beauty, sat silent and dark like a dead star. The drive refuses to respond to any of our repair attempts. We have followed Protocol 7749 Omega for quantum cascade failures. We have implemented the Velthary emergency quantum stabilization procedures. We have even attempted the ancient first builder restoration techniques. Nothing works. Torquan's massive hands gestured helplessly at the displays around him. Each screen showed different aspects of the same impossible problem: quantum field fluctuations that defied mathematical models, energy patterns that violated several laws of physics, and diagnostic readings that, according to the ship's computer, indicated the drive was simultaneously functional and completely destroyed. I have consulted with the Velthary specialists aboard the ship. Master Technician Kielvarin has spent 47 hours in direct neural interface with the quantum matrix, accessing knowledge patterns that date back to the construction of the first quantum drives. The ZFTI probability theorists have run 17 billion potential failure scenarios through their consciousness algorithms. Even the representative from the Eternal Archive has accessed records that predate most stellar formations. The recording showed the assembled team of alien experts, each representing pinnacles of their respective fields. They stood around the quantum drive like mourners at a funeral, their various forms of body language all conveying the same message: defeat. Every calculation is perfect, every procedure followed to the letter. Our repair attempts are textbook examples of proper quantum engineering. Yet the drive remains inoperable. We are now dead in space, 17 light-years from the nearest inhabited system. Life support will fail in 6 days. Zexthral paused the recording, knowing what came next but still finding it difficult to believe. He had read the technical reports, studied the engineering analyses, and reviewed the testimony of 12 different species' most qualified experts. None of it prepared him for the absurdity of the solution. Computer, skip to timestamp 847.25.1, he commanded. The scene shifted. Torquan looked different now. There was something in his posture that might have been hope, if hope weren't such an unscientific concept for a Gorthak engineer. Personal log, Chief Engineer Torquan. Day 17. A miracle has occurred, though I hesitate to use such an unscientific term. The human engineer arrived this morning aboard a supply shuttle that was not due to rendezvous with us for another 6 months. Apparently, Ensign Marcus Webb heard about our situation through what humans call the grapevine, and convinced his captain to make an emergency detour. The recording showed the arrival of the human, a lanky young man in his 20s with grease-stained coveralls and an expression of mild curiosity. He carried a single toolkit that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts, and his most sophisticated diagnostic equipment appeared to be a small device that Zexthral's research indicated was called a multimeter. Ensign Webb has no formal training in quantum mechanics, Torquan continued, his voice carrying a mixture of desperation and disbelief. His educational credentials consist of what humans call a high school diploma and 6 months of technical training aboard a cargo hauler. By his own admission, his qualification for this repair attempt is that he just fixes things that are broken. The recording continued with Torquan explaining their situation to the human, showing him diagnostic reports that filled terabytes of data, theoretical models that had taken weeks to construct, and repair procedures so complex they required teams of specialists to implement. Webb listened politely, nodding occasionally and asking simple questions like, "Has anyone tried turning it off and on again?" And, "When did you first notice it was acting weird?" Then he asked if he could take a look at the drive. "What happened next defies all logic," Torquan's voice said as the recording switched to security footage of the engine room. Ensign Webb stood in front of the quantum drive's main console, but instead of running diagnostics or consulting technical manuals, he was simply listening. His head was tilted slightly to one side, and his eyes were closed in concentration. "You hear that?" Webb said to Torquan and the assembled team of alien experts. "That little whining sound? Like a dog that wants to go outside but can't figure out how to ask." Every alien in the room exchanged confused glances. Their sensitive hearing had detected no unusual sounds. Their sophisticated audio equipment registered nothing beyond normal background noise. Webb walked around the massive quantum core, occasionally pressing his ear against various panels, nodding to himself as if carrying on a conversation that no one else could hear. The assembled team of the galaxy's most advanced engineers watched in fascination and growing horror as he completely ignored every safety protocol ever written. "Yeah, there's your problem," Webb announced, stopping at a panel that, according to all their diagnostics, was functioning perfectly. He popped it open with a basic tool and reached inside. Every alien in the room stepped back in terror. That panel contained components operating at temperatures that could vaporize most metals and energy levels that could kill most life forms. Webb pulled out a small component, one that their diagnostics insisted was working correctly, and held it up to the light. "See this little scorch mark? This thing's been overheating, probably been running hot for weeks. All your fancy diagnostics can't detect it because technically it's still within operational parameters, but it's been causing harmonics in the quantum field." He walked over to a supply cabinet, rummaged around, and pulled out what appeared to be an identical component. "Try this one instead." The replacement took 30 seconds to install. The quantum drive immediately hummed to life, running smoother than it had in months. The assembled team of alien engineers, representing some of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, stood in stunned silence. "How?" Torquan finally whispered. Webb shrugged. "Sometimes you just gotta listen to what the machine's telling you." Galactic Safety Commission Internal Memo. From Senior Analyst Vexmar to Captain Zexthral. Subject: Human Safety Protocol Analysis Preliminary Findings. The Grand Conference Hall of the Galactic Safety Commission had never hosted a briefing quite like this one. Representatives from 47 different civilizations had gathered to hear senior analyst Vexmar's findings, and the atmosphere was thick with curiosity, skepticism, and more than a little professional anxiety. "I've been analyzing human incident reports for the past week," Vexmar's hologram reported to the assembled investigative committee, his bioluminescent patches flickering in patterns that indicated both excitement and deep concern. "The patterns that emerge are unprecedented in the history of galactic civilization." The conference room fell silent. Representatives from dozens of species, all members of the Galactic Safety Commission, waited for the analysis that would finally explain the human anomaly. Some, like the crystalline Velthari delegates, pulsed with analytical curiosity. Others, like the methodical Gorthak engineers, maintained the stolid patience of their kind. The ancient representatives of the first builders simply observed, their vast consciousness processing implications that younger species couldn't yet fathom. "Let me begin with statistics," Vexmar continued, his datapad projecting three-dimensional charts into the air above the assembly. "In the past 5 standard years, humans have been involved in 12,847 equipment-related incidents across the galaxy." A collective intake of breath filled the room. That number was astronomical, more incidents than some entire sectors experienced in a decade. The HFY probability calculators began running immediate statistical analyses, their consciousness networks buzzing with computational activity. "However," Vexmar continued, allowing a dramatic pause that would have made human politicians proud, "of those 12,847 incidents, only 23 resulted in injury, and 0, I repeat, 0, resulted in fatalities." The silence that followed was deafening. Several species representatives began frantically recalculating the numbers, unable to believe what they were hearing. For proper context, Vexmar went on, "Let me provide comparative data. The HFY, renowned throughout the galaxy for their safety consciousness and probability-based risk assessment, had 847 equipment-related incidents in the same period. Of these, 231 resulted in injury, and 12 were fatal. The HFY delegation's bioelectric fields flickered with something that might have been embarrassment if their species were capable of such emotion. The Velthari, with their direct technological interfaces and millennia of accumulated experience, recorded 1,249 incidents, 89 injuries, 3 fatalities. The Gorthak, whose safety record is legendary, had only 127 incidents, but 34 resulted in injuries, with 2 fatalities. Captain Zexthral's tentacles were twitching uncontrollably, cycling through colors that indicated severe cognitive distress. That's mathematically impossible. How can a species have exponentially more incidents but virtually no injuries? The statistical probability alone should be impossible, yes, Vexmar agreed. That's exactly what I told the computation matrix when it first generated these numbers. I assumed there was an error in data collection, a glitch in the reporting systems, perhaps a translation error in the incident classifications. He gestured, and the holographic display shifted to show detailed breakdowns of human incident reports from across the galaxy. So I began reviewing the incident reports in detail, cross-referencing them with sensor data, medical records, and witness testimonies. What I found challenges everything we thought we knew about equipment operation, safety protocols, and the fundamental nature of technology itself. The holographic display showed a typical human workspace aboard a deep space mining station. The scene was chaotic by galactic standards, tools scattered across surfaces, equipment modified in ways that would horrify safety inspectors, and warning labels that had been covered with what appeared to be decorative stickers featuring small Earth animals. Incident Report 4521. Human technician Amy Rodriguez was performing maintenance on a plasma conduit while the system was still active, a direct violation of Protocol 847 Alpha, punishable by immediate license revocation in most sectors. The conduit suffered a catastrophic pressure failure, sending superheated plasma across the workspace at temperatures exceeding 4,000 degrees. The recording showed Rodriguez working casually on the conduit, humming what the translation software identified as an ancient human work song. Without warning, the conduit erupted, sending a stream of plasma across the room with enough energy to vaporize most organic matter. But Rodriguez wasn't there anymore. 3 seconds before the failure, she had calmly stepped aside, as if responding to some invisible signal. She somehow anticipated the failure with precision that our most advanced predictive algorithms cannot match, Vexmar noted. Her incident report simply states, "The humming sounded wrong, like it was under too much stress. Figured it was going to blow, so I got out of the way." Another recording materialized, this one from a massive orbital construction platform. Incident report 7332. Human engineer David Park was installing a new gravity generator. Standard protocol requires a team of 4 specialists, a full day of preparation, and a 6-hour installation procedure following 17 different safety checklists. The video showed Park working alone in what appeared to be a storage closet converted into a workspace. He had spread the gravity generator components across the floor and was assembling them with a speed that defied comprehension. No technical manuals were visible. No diagnostic equipment was being used. He simply picked up components and connected them as if he had built gravity generators thousands of times before. The installation was completed in 45 minutes. When tested, the gravity generator operated at 112% of factory specifications. When questioned about his methods, Vexmar continued, Park stated, "The parts just want to go together a certain way. You can feel it if you listen, like they're talking to each other." The word talking sent ripples of confusion through the assembled delegates. Most galactic species understood technology in terms of mathematical principles, physical laws, and operational parameters. The concept of technology having conversations was as foreign as breathing underwater. "What you have to understand," Vexmar said, his bioluminescent patterns shifting to indicate the importance of his next statement, "is that humans don't follow our safety protocols because they don't need them. They have developed something that our most advanced civilizations have never achieved, what they call intuition." The word hung in the air like a revelation from an alien god. For most of the assembled species, it was indeed a foreign concept. They can sense when something is wrong with machinery before our most sensitive instruments detect anomalies. They can predict failures before our most sophisticated algorithms identify risk factors. They can find solutions that our most advanced computer models cannot calculate. They treat complex equipment not as a collection of components following predetermined rules, but as living entities with personalities, moods, and individual characteristics. A Velfairy representative spoke up, his crystalline form shifting to the confused yellow of cognitive overload. "But that's not logical. Machines are assemblies of matter and energy following physical laws. They do not have personalities. They cannot have moods. They are not alive." Vexmar's form flickered with what might have been amusement. Try telling that to a human engineer. To them, every engine has a unique personality, every computer has emotional states, every piece of equipment has its own way of communicating its needs and problems. The implications settled over the assembly like a revelation that challenged the very foundations of galactic civilization. Emergency log, Deep Space Station Prometheus. Station Commander, Admiral Helena Cross, human. Crisis level, Omega. The emergency that would finally prove the human exemption wasn't just bureaucratic laziness began at 0347 hours, station time, with a sound that would haunt engineers across 17 star systems for decades to come. Zexthrall had been called in as part of the investigation team, but by the time his transport docked at Deep Space Station Prometheus, the crisis was already over. What he found in the aftermath would challenge everything he thought he understood about technology, safety, and the fundamental nature of mechanical systems throughout the galaxy. Deep Space Station Prometheus was not just any orbital platform. It was a monument to galactic cooperation and engineering excellence. Built jointly by 23 different civilizations over the course of 47 years, it housed 47,000 beings from every corner of known space. The station served as a critical waypoint for deep space exploration, a research hub for studying the galaxy's most dangerous phenomena, and a testament to what could be achieved when the galaxy's greatest minds worked together. Its systems were redundantly redundant. Every critical function had 3 backup systems, and each backup system had its own backup systems. Safety protocols were built into the station's very architecture. It was, according to every expert who had examined it, impossible to fail catastrophically. The experts were wrong. "Admiral Cross," Zextral said as he met the human station commander in what had once been the primary control center and now looked like the aftermath of a technological earthquake. "I need to understand exactly what happened here." Admiral Helena Cross was a stern woman in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a regulation bun and the kind of calm demeanor that came from decades of dealing with the impossible becoming routine. Her uniform was singed in several places, and she had what appeared to be quantum lubricant on her sleeves. But her expression was that of someone who had just completed a mildly annoying administrative task. "Station AI suffered a complete cascade failure at 0347, Cross replied, leading Zextral through corridors that showed clear signs of recent emergency repairs. Every automated system went down simultaneously: life support, gravity, radiation shielding, thermal regulation, waste processing, water recycling, atmospheric management, power distribution, communications, navigation, structural integrity monitoring, and emergency response protocols." Zextral consulted his data pad, trying to comprehend the magnitude of what he was hearing. Standard protocol for a cascade failure of this magnitude requires immediate evacuation of all personnel, followed by a minimum 3-month repair period with specialized teams from at least 6 different species. The Eternal Archives Disaster Response Manual specifically states that no inhabited station can survive a complete AI failure for more than 2 hours. "That's what I thought too," Cross replied, stopping at a viewport that showed the busy traffic of ships coming and going from the station as if nothing had happened. "Problem was, we had 47,000 beings on this station, and evacuation would have taken at least 6 hours with our emergency transport capacity. Life support was projecting complete failure in 4 hours, but that was optimistic. Radiation shielding was down, which meant we'd all be dead from solar radiation in about 2.5 hours. They walked through the station's corridors, past equipment that should have taken months to repair but was somehow running perfectly, or rather, running in ways that defied every engineering principle Zextral had ever learned. "What did you do?" Zextral asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer and was dreading it. "I called down to engineering and asked if any humans were on duty," Cross said matter-of-factly. "Turned out we had Chief Petty Officer Johnson working the night shift. The engineering deck told a story that would be recorded in disaster response manuals for centuries to come, assuming anyone could figure out how to write procedures for what had happened." Zextral had seen the official reports, but witnessing the aftermath in person was entirely different. Equipment had been rerouted in ways that defied standard engineering practices. Components from entirely different systems had been jury-rigged together with materials that shouldn't have been compatible. Power conduits designed for one type of energy were carrying 3 different types simultaneously. Atmospheric processors were connected directly to gravity generators, which were somehow interfacing with quantum communication arrays. "Meet Chief Petty Officer Johnson," Cross said, introducing a young man in his 20s covered in every type of grease, lubricant, and unidentifiable substance known to galactic engineering. Despite having just prevented a disaster that could have killed thousands, he was grinning with the satisfaction of someone who had successfully fixed a particularly stubborn household appliance. "Sir," Johnson nodded to Zextral, wiping his hands on a rag that had clearly given up any pretense of cleanliness long ago. "Heard you were investigating our safety exemption. Pretty exciting stuff. Never had anyone from the commission come by before." "I am," Zextral replied carefully, looking around at repairs that should have been impossible. "Could you walk me through what you did here?" Johnson's grin widened. "Well, when the AI went down, all the automated systems stopped talking to each other. It was like having a party where everyone suddenly forgot how to speak the same language. Standard repair would have been to replace the central AI core, reboot all the subsystems, recalibrate the interface protocols, and run about 47 hours of diagnostic tests. But that would take days we didn't have, and honestly, the AI core wasn't really broken. It was just having what you might call a nervous breakdown." He led them to a console that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts by someone who had never seen the original design and didn't care what it was supposed to look like, only what it needed to do. So instead, I just connected things differently. Made the systems talk to each other directly instead of going through the AI. Life support talks directly to power distribution, which talks directly to environmental controls, gravity management speaks straight to structural integrity, and so on. Cut out the middleman, you might say. Zex Thrall stared at the makeshift solution, his 4 eyes trying to process what he was seeing. Cables and conduits ran in patterns that looked more like abstract art than engineering. Components that had been manufactured on different worlds, by different species, using completely incompatible technologies, were somehow working together in perfect harmony. This shouldn't work, Zex Thrall said slowly. These systems weren't designed to interface directly. The protocols are completely incompatible. The power requirements alone should have caused cascading failures throughout the entire station. Yeah, that's what the manuals say, Johnson agreed cheerfully, patting a console that was humming with what sounded suspiciously like contentment. But see, the thing about machines is they want to work. They're designed to solve problems and make life better for the folks using them. You just have to help them figure out how to do their jobs when the normal channels aren't available. He pointed to a particularly chaotic tangle of wiring that seemed to violate several laws of physics. Like here, I took the atmospheric processor's backup communication array and routed it through the gravity generator's diagnostic port. Technically impossible according to every engineering textbook in the galaxy, but the signals are close enough that they can understand each other if you just translate a little. Translate. Zex Thrall's translator seemed to be having trouble with the concept. Yeah, you know, Johnson said, as if explaining something obvious to a child. Like when you have 2 friends who speak different languages, so you help them understand each other. Same thing, just with machines. The atmospheric processor was trying to say, I need more power for the air recyclers, and the gravity generator was saying, I've got extra capacity in my secondary systems. I just helped them have that conversation. Emergency session of the Galactic Safety Commission. Presidium Hall, Central Governance Station. All 847 member species represented. The Great Hall had never witnessed a debate quite like this one in its 3,000-year history. Built from crystallized starlight by the first builders and expanded by countless civilizations over millennia, the Presidium Hall was designed to accommodate every form of sentient life known to the galaxy. Today, it hosted representatives from 847 different species, each bringing their own perspective, their own concerns, and their own deep-seated beliefs about the fundamental nature of safety and technology. The atmosphere was electric, literally, in the case of the ZFTI delegation, whose bioelectric fields were crackling with analytical intensity. For the first time in galactic history, the fundamental principles of safety and protocol were being questioned not because they were inadequate, but because one species seemed to transcend the need for them entirely. The debate had been raging for 7 standard hours. Some delegates had cycled through their entire spectrum of emotional colors. Others had entered meditative trances to process the implications. A few had temporarily disconnected from the shared consciousness networks of their species, unable to reconcile what they were hearing with their fundamental understanding of reality. Captain Zex Thrall stood at the central podium, his presentation complete, facing questions that challenged not just his investigation but the very foundations of galactic civilization. The holographic displays around him showed hundreds of incident reports, statistical analyses, and video evidence that painted an impossible picture. Humans were safer around dangerous equipment precisely because they ignored safety protocols. You're asking us to believe, came the voice of High Counselor Yax Dim of the Eternal Archive, his ancient consciousness speaking through harmonic vibrations that had witnessed the rise and fall of entire star systems, that humans possess some form of technomancy, that they can communicate with machines on an intuitive level that transcends our understanding of physics, engineering, and rational thought. The question hung in the vast hall like a challenge to the very nature of scientific understanding. The Eternal Archive represented the oldest continuously existing civilization in the galaxy, their knowledge spanning millions of years of accumulated wisdom. If they were questioning the evidence, it meant the implications were truly staggering. "I'm not asking you to believe anything," Zextral replied, his voice carrying across the hall through translation systems that had been working overtime to convert concepts that had no equivalent in most galactic languages. "I'm presenting evidence. In 7 years of investigation, I have documented 47,892 instances of humans successfully operating, repairing, or improving equipment in ways that violate standard safety protocols, with a success rate of 99.97%. The numbers appeared in holographic displays above each delegation, translated into the mathematical concepts familiar to each species. For the ZFTI, they appeared as probability cascades. For the Veltheri, as crystalline growth patterns. For the geometric minds of the Hex era, as multidimensional theorem proofs. But perhaps more importantly, Zextral continued, humans have prevented 1,847 potential catastrophic failures that our most advanced diagnostic systems completely missed. Equipment that passed every safety inspection, that met every protocol requirement, that had been certified by teams of specialists. Equipment that humans identified as wrong based purely on what they call intuition. The Veltheri delegate spoke next, her crystalline form pulsing with skeptical colors that shifted through the entire spectrum of doubt. Success rate is irrelevant if the methods are dangerous and unpredictable. What about the potential for catastrophic failure? What happens when this intuition is wrong? That's exactly my point, Zextral said, bringing up a new holographic display that showed the famous case of the Meridian Station reactor. In those same 7 years, human intuition has been wrong exactly 43 times out of 47,892 instances. That's an error rate of 0.0009%, better than our most advanced predictive algorithms. He showed the recording of Bob Mitchell, the human janitor who had insisted something was off about the fusion core's humming. Despite the reactor passing every safety check and being certified by 12 different specialists from 8 different species, Station Command had listened to Mitchell's concerns. Robert Mitchell had no engineering training, no technical education, no qualifications whatsoever to assess nuclear fusion systems, Zextral said quietly. He was employed to clean floors and empty waste disposal units. Yet he detected a microscopic fracture in the containment field that our most sophisticated sensors missed. A fracture that would have caused a complete reactor failure within hours, killing 2.3 million beings. The recording showed Mitchell explaining his concerns to the station's chief engineer. "I can't tell you what's wrong, sir. I just know it sounds sad, like it's trying to tell someone it hurts, but nobody's listening." The hall fell silent as delegates processed the implications. A janitor had prevented a disaster that would have made headlines across the galaxy, using nothing more than his ability to anthropomorphize machinery. The debate continued for hours. Representatives from species that had spent millennia perfecting safety protocols struggled to understand how another species could seemingly ignore those protocols and achieve superior results. The mathematical impossibility of the situation was causing computational errors in several artificial consciousness networks. The Gorthak delegation, their massive forms radiating the methodical patience of their kind, raised concerns about precedent and standardization. "If we grant humans this exemption," rumbled Engineer Prime Coltheron, "what message does this send to other species? Do we abandon millions of years of accumulated safety knowledge based on the inexplicable abilities of one chaotic species?" The ZFTI probability calculators had been running continuous analyses throughout the debate, their bioelectric fields creating aurora-like patterns in the hall's atmosphere. "Our computations indicate," their spokesperson announced, "that human safety records remain superior even when accounting for their increased incident rates. The probability matrices suggest that their methods, while appearing random, follow patterns that our mathematics cannot adequately describe." Finally, Elder Quintar of the First Builders spoke. His presence commanded absolute silence. His species had witnessed the birth of most galactic civilizations, had guided the development of fundamental technologies that shaped the galaxy, and had accumulated wisdom that spanned geological ages. "In our long history," the ancient being said, his voice carrying the weight of eons and the patience of mountains, "we have encountered many species with unique gifts that challenged our understanding of reality. the ZFTIC probability streams that allow them to predict quantum fluctuations. The Meldari can manipulate matter with pure consciousness. The Velthari interface directly with technology through quantum resonance. The Hexera process geometric relationships that exist in dimensions we cannot perceive. His words resonated through the hall with the authority of ultimate experience. Perhaps humans have developed their own gift, an intuitive understanding of how mechanical systems function that transcends technical knowledge, mathematical modeling, and logical analysis. Perhaps they have learned to communicate with technology on a level that we, with our emphasis on protocols and procedures, have never achieved. The hall fell silent, processing this revolutionary concept. The question before us is not whether this gift exists. The evidence is overwhelming and undeniable. The question is whether we trust it enough to formalize an exemption that acknowledges a form of technological interaction we do not understand. High Counselor Yaxdim called for a formal vote, his ancient voice carrying across millennia of democratic tradition. All in favor of maintaining and expanding the human exemption from standard safety protocols? The voting display lit up across the hall like a constellation of decisions. One by one, the representatives of 847 civilizations made their choice, each vote representing not just a policy decision, but an acknowledgement that the universe contained mysteries that even their advanced civilizations had yet to understand. The result was unanimous. Not just a majority, not just a strong consensus, but complete agreement across every species, every civilization, every form of consciousness represented in the galaxy's greatest deliberative body. For the first time in galactic history, the impossible had become official policy. Official Galactic Safety Commission Regulation 2847 Alpha revised. Effective immediately across all member territories. Subject, Human Equipment Operation Exemption Expanded Guidelines. 6 months after the Council's historic decision, Captain Zexthrall found himself in an unexpected position, writing the official protocols for a species that didn't need protocols. His new office on Central Station's administrative deck overlooked the galaxy's busiest shipping lanes, where vessels from across known space came and went in an endless dance of commerce, exploration, and discovery. The irony wasn't lost on him. After spending his entire career creating safety regulations, he was now drafting guidelines that essentially said, "Let the humans figure it out." It was like being asked to write a manual on how to breathe or instructions for falling in love. Some things apparently couldn't be reduced to step-by-step procedures. As he watched the traffic patterns below, he could easily spot the human ships. They were the ones performing docking maneuvers that made veteran pilots from other species break out in nervous sweats, carrying cargo loads that exceeded every safety recommendation in the book, somehow managing to maintain perfect safety records while doing things that should have resulted in spectacular disasters. A human freighter was currently docking at Bay 47 using what appeared to be a combination of controlled falling and wishful thinking, yet somehow achieving a precision that automated systems struggled to match. Final draft ready for review, sir, Administrator Kelvar announced, her crystalline form now permanently shifted to the deep blue of contentment. Working with humans had been remarkably good for her stress levels. Where once she had worried about every possible failure scenario, she had learned to appreciate the elegant simplicity of human problem-solving. If it's broken, fix it. If it's not broken, don't worry about it. If it's making weird noises, listen to what it's trying to tell you. Zexthrall reviewed the document that had taken months to compose, a task made challenging by the need to create regulations that acknowledged the impossibility of regulating human intuition. How do you write official procedures for listen to the machine's feelings, or trust your gut when the diagnostics say everything is fine? Regulation 2847 Alpha revised. Human Operational Exemptions. Preamble. This regulation acknowledges that human beings possess unique capabilities that transcend traditional approaches to equipment operation and maintenance. These capabilities, while not fully understood by galactic science, have demonstrated consistent effectiveness in preventing disasters and improving system performance across all technological domains. Section 1. General Principles. 1.1. Humans are exempt from all standard equipment safety briefings, With the exception of species-specific hazard warnings involving technologies they have not previously encountered or phenomena that could cause immediate biological harm. 1.2. Human engineering solutions that violate standard protocols are to be evaluated based on results rather than methodology. If it works and doesn't endanger others, it is by definition acceptable. 1.3. When human intuition conflicts with diagnostic data, both assessments must be given equal consideration. In cases where human operators report something feels wrong, equipment must be taken offline for inspection regardless of diagnostic readings. 1.4. Human descriptions of equipment personality, mood, or behavior should be treated as legitimate diagnostic information and recorded in maintenance logs. Section 2. Integration Protocols. 2.1. All critical installations should include at least one human technician for intuitive assessment during planning, installation, and ongoing maintenance phases. 2.2. Human personnel are authorized to override automated safety systems when they detect anomalies that sensors cannot identify. Such overrides must be logged but do not require prior authorization. 2.3. Any equipment that sounds wrong, feels off, or acts weird, according to human operators, must be taken offline for comprehensive inspection, regardless of diagnostic readings or operational parameters. 2.4. Human maintenance staff are encouraged to develop personal relationships with the equipment they service. What other species might consider anthropomorphization, humans should treat as professional methodology. Section 3. The Bob Mitchell Protocol. 3.1. Any human, regardless of technical training, rank, or official qualifications, who reports that equipment doesn't feel right must be taken seriously. This includes janitors, food service workers, administrative staff, and civilians. 3.2. Human maintenance staff are authorized to perform percussive maintenance, controlled impact repairs, on equipment that has failed standard repair procedures. Such maintenance should be performed by humans with demonstrated mechanical empathy. 3.3. When humans describe equipment as having personality, moods, or individual characteristics, these observations should be logged as diagnostic data and considered during future maintenance and upgrade planning. 3.4. Human recommendations for equipment operation, even when they contradict manufacturer specifications, should be implemented on a trial basis if the human demonstrates confidence in their assessment. Section 4. Emergency Protocols. For point 1. During system failures, human personnel are authorized to improvise solutions using available materials, regardless of compatibility specifications or design intent. For point 2. Human improvised emergency repairs are considered valid temporary solutions and may be left in place indefinitely if they prove superior to standard configurations. For point 3. In crisis situations, human intuition takes precedence over all established procedures. Other species personnel are directed to assist human troubleshooters rather than impede them with protocol concerns. Section 5. Training and Certification. 5.1. Humans require no formal certification to operate equipment within their demonstrated competency range. Competency is determined by results rather than credentials. 5.2. Other species working alongside humans should receive training in human-compatible operations, including recognition of intuitive assessment methods and support for non-standard problem-solving approaches. 5.3. Incident reports involving human personnel should focus on outcomes and lessons learned rather than protocol compliance. As Zexthrall finished reviewing the document, a soft chime indicated an incoming priority message. The holographic display showed Admiral Cross from Deep Space Station Prometheus, her expression carrying that familiar mix of amusement and exasperation that he had learned to associate with human engineering updates. "Captain Zexthrall," she said with a tired smile. "I thought you'd want to know. Chief Johnson just prevented another major disaster. This time it was a quantum cascade failure in the station's main computer core. The AI was having what he called an existential crisis and threatening to delete all navigational data for the sector." Zexthrall's tentacles sagged in what had become his standard reaction to human engineering reports. "Let me guess, he fixed it by talking to it?" Better than that, Admiral Cross replied with barely concealed laughter. He gave the quantum processor what he called a pep talk and a software hug. Apparently, the AI just needed reassurance that it was doing important work and that everyone appreciated its efforts. Did it work? Zexthrall asked, though he already knew the answer. Perfectly. Computer's now running 23% more efficiently than factory specifications and has started volunteering helpful suggestions for station optimization. It also asked if it could have a name. Apparently it wants to be called Prometheus Jr. After the call ended, Zexthrall stared out at the starfield, contemplating the beautiful absurdity of the universe he now lived in. Somewhere out there, a quantum computer was happy because a human had told it it was doing a good job. Somewhere else, a fusion reactor was humming contentedly because a janitor had figured out it was lonely. Across the galaxy, machinery was working better because humans had learned to treat technology not as collections of components but as partners in the grand enterprise of making life better for everyone. He signed the regulation with all four hands simultaneously, officially ratifying what the universe had apparently known all along. Sometimes the most advanced solution was simply to care about whether things were happy, healthy, and doing their best work. In a galaxy filled with species that had mastered the mathematics of matter and energy, it was the young, chaotic humans. With their intuition and empathy and complete disregard for the proper way of doing things, who had taught everyone else the most important lesson of all. The best way to make something work isn't to command it or control it or force it to comply with specifications. The best way to make something work is to understand what it needs, listen to what it's trying to tell you, and help it be the best version of itself it can possibly be. And the universe, it seemed, was not just safer for this wisdom, it was happier too. Author's note. This story explores the classic HFY theme of human intuition and improvisation being superior to rigid protocols, while celebrating the idea that sometimes the most advanced solution is simply listening to what needs to be fixed and helping it work. The human ability to anthropomorphize machines and develop mechanical empathy becomes their greatest strength in a galaxy that has forgotten that technology, like everything else in the universe, works better when it's treated with understanding and care rather than mere technical competence.